I've been working for the Career Center since January of 2021, so I've been here for a little bit of time. And I started my career actually in higher ed, and then I spent a lot of time after that for about 15 or so years working in tech and in an HR capacity. And I did a lot in the area of recruiting and talent acquisition. So I feel like I've kind of come full circle back to my roots. And I spent 6 years at the Career Center at the University of Arizona. So that's where I first worked in career services. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to always accept student connections. So feel free to do that. I would love to connect with you. And as we're going along, feel free to put some questions in the chat periodically. I will have Vanya just, ask me a couple and we'll answer as we go. And we'll save as much time as we can at the end to answer any questions that you have. And I'm sure we'll probably run out of time to do that, but we'll do the best we can with that as we go along. So before I do anything else, I would love for you to just take out your phone and take a moment. Kind of where does your resume stand today? So I kind of get a sense of what we're working with here. So, what resume? You've never written one before? You have an old resume that needs updating. Your resume just needs a few a few things. So there you go. So we'll see where we stand in a minute here. Couple have an old resume. Okay, good. Take another 20 seconds or so. Okay. Well, that's pretty good. So most of you just, the majority of the folks just need a few quick tweaks to get your resume to a better spot. So definitely some of the things we're going to talk about today will help you get there. And then a large majority have a resume that they used in high school, but they need one for college. So there's a lot of good information that we're going to cover in that regard too. And then, of course, we have a few folks that need to do some maybe more serious updating. And then we've got maybe one or two folks that have never written a resume before. So there's something for everybody here today. But I just kind of wanted to get a sense of what my audience is kind of feeling today. All righty. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to cover in our workshop. So we're going to spend some time on resume tips and suggestions. That's probably the most of the time we're going to spend. And then I want to make sure you're aware of some Career Center and other resources that we would recommend. And then I always think it's good to kind of do a little bit of an overview of recruiting timelines because I know that folks have questions about when do things start and stop. I'm also going to share a little bit about some resources that we have in terms of workshops and things like that for the fall, and then some final thoughts and Q&A, although we'll do a little bit of Q&A as we go. This is being recorded. It will be posted on our YouTube channel, so you should see that by the end of the day this Friday. So if you want to refer back to anything, you'll have that ability to do at that time. All right. So as you're updating your resume, there are some things that you want to consider. So kind of like, what do you need to update? What content do you need to add? What do you need to remove? How are you going to actually do that? So, what kinds of formatting are you going to use? What headings are you going to use? Are you going to rearrange your resume completely because you really need to change something around? Who are you going to send your resume to? So, what is the job? Who is your audience? And then I always think it's good to just kind of go through some pitfalls to avoid so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we have all the right information, all the right content, but we do something that maybe doesn't make our resume stand out in some way that's easily fixable. So we'll talk some about that as well. So maybe just in the chat, if you could just put a few things in there, like what do you think you need to update on your resume? Those of you who need to make some quick tweaks, um, that's probably would apply to you the most, but I'm just curious what you think would be important to add to your resume or change about your resume. Have you seen any themes, Vanya?
Yeah, love love the transparency. A couple of folks saying they're not sure, so that's why they're here.
Okay, good.
Um, Project and experience with some kudos over there. Work experience, activity description. Not sure whether to include a certain section or not. Formatting for ATS. What to leave or take off from high school.
Okay.
Yeah, professional
Okay.
summary. That's another one.
Okay, good. That's a good list of things. All right. So here are some thoughts. So there might be some older experiences that you have that, maybe now some of you are, say you're a senior now, and the last time you updated your resume was maybe a year or two ago. And you've got some stuff from high school that you needed back then. So maybe you don't really need that anymore because now you've had an internship or you've had some sort of work experience or clubs or organizations you've been a part of that maybe now some of the information that's more recent would be something to consider adding. And maybe now you want to remove some things. As a general rule of thumb, kind of regarding high school, um, usually if you're a first year, so those of you who are just starting school, obviously you want to have your high school stuff because that's what you have so far. So you wouldn't want to take that off. And for some folks, if you're a sophomore, you probably still want to have some things from high school because you maybe haven't done enough yet in college. So that's, something to think about. It really can be considered like a case by case sort of basis in terms of what you keep and what you let go of from high school. But as a general rule of thumb, by the time you're a junior, a lot of your high school stuff in general would be gone. And for some of you, maybe that would even happen as a sophomore too. Okay, so that kind of gives you a sense for those of you who are thinking about what do I take off or leave from high school. And then what do you need to add? So there were some things that were said in the chat. So maybe your GPA has changed. Hopefully it went in a good direction and you could maybe add that. So, there are some cases where a 3.5 or higher is probably the way to go. If you have a GPA like that, you should probably put it on your resume. Anything below a 3, you definitely should not. And some of what you include in terms of GPA will depend a little bit on your field of study. Like if you're trying to be in the accounting field and you want to work for the Big Four, they're going to look for like a 3.5 or above. So you want to kind of keep those things in mind. Obviously, you might have had a new job or an internship or something that you're doing this summer, which is partly why we offer this workshop during the summer so that you can start adding that information now. And then maybe your major has changed or your graduation date has changed. So that's something to think about. Relevant coursework. So if you are if you're looking for an internship, relevant coursework might be really important for somebody to know about so that they have an understanding of what you've done in the past or what courses you've completed and what projects you've completed. So those are some things to consider. Maybe you've got some new awards that you've won, or you have been working this summer on completing some certifications. You've joined a club, you've got some organizations that you're a part of. So that's something that's important. For those of you on the more technical side of the world, a GitHub link. So that might be important, and definitely something to consider adding, and really, I think a necessity. And then some of you may have a personal website of some sort, so that would be something to include as well. So those are just some general ideas of information that you might want to both add as well as remove as we go forward here. So that kind of kicks us off to our next slide, which is how are you going to update your resume? So for those of you who mentioned that you've never written a resume before, um, and anybody really should have this, but you want to have a master resume. If you don't already have one, you definitely want to have one because it helps you keep track of everything. And that is extremely important as you get older, like myself. You start forgetting all the things that you've done, but you might even have that problem if you're really active in college already. So you're going to want to start with a master resume, and that gives you an idea or a way of including all your skills and experience on one document. And length is really not the issue. So this can be as long as you want it to be. You're not going to send this out to anybody. You're going to use this document to keep track of what you've done and then take bits and pieces of it, depending on the jobs that you apply for, and create a resume that you're going to send out for each job. So this is just a way to kind of keep you engaged that way. Just a show of hands, maybe. How many people have a master resume document that they maintain? If you put show of hands in the chat. So a couple. So it's a good practice to get into, and it's not too late to do it. So definitely think about that as a possibility. It just makes it really a lot easier to tailor your resume each time. Another strategy to really updating your resume or creating a great resume, this is kind of the second thing that I want to make sure we talk about, is using accomplishment statements. So accomplishment statements highlight experiences that you've had in your work where you were successful. And they don't have to be grandiose, but they need to be, your statements on your resume need to be written in a way that kind of entices somebody to read further. And as you're writing accomplishment statements, you want to use this method called CAR, where you're actually describing the context of something that you did, an action that you took, and then a result that happened from what you've done. So I'm going to give you an example. You can also, when you create these, you can also use these on your LinkedIn profile. So that's not like it's just a once and you're done. You can use these other ways. So here's an example of some training that somebody, put together. And really what's kind of cool about this is they took all this information and then they created um, a statement. So responded to lack of customer service training by creating manual with 15 frequently asked questions for new employees, resulting in a 20% increase in customer satisfaction at front desk. So they didn't just kind of slap something together. They gave some thought to what actually happened. And then they really talked about um, how successful they were by including numbers. So wherever you can quantify things, that is a really good way to go. So that helps you stand out when you're writing your accomplishment statements within each of your job functions. So that might be an area that you want to spend a little bit of time on as you're updating your resume. All right. The next thing is using powerful action words. So this is something that you'll want to do. And really, I think everything that you write when you write your resume, most people use more of a bullet point format. You don't have to do it that way, but that tends to draw people's eye to read things quickly. But every bullet point should start with an action verb of some kind. And you really want to get in the habit of doing this because you got to remember your resume is not a job description. So a lot of resumes I see where they miss the mark is they'll say things like responsibilities included or duties included, stuff like that. So you want to get out of that because what I really want to know if I'm a recruiter is, what a picture of you. I want to know what you've done. And then I also want to know what's special because you did it. So five people could have the same job description, but they're all going to do it differently. So that's something for you to be thinking about as you're thinking of powerful action verbs. Then we want to think about the next thing is to think about powerful headers. So you got to think resumes are flexible documents. Here's an example of some headers on the left-hand side of the slide here. This is certainly not an all-inclusive list. There are lots of other possible headers that you could use, but you want to use headers that are going to really put your experience in the best light, that are easily scannable when you think about an applicant tracking system, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and that really bring the reader's attention to the skills and abilities and qualifications that you have. So there's an example on the right-hand side of the slide about, how somebody put this information together for themselves. So they started with a summary and education, and then they felt like their projects were the next thing that they wanted to include, and then work experience and so on. So there's no one right way to do this, but this is just one example. And then kind of thinking a little bit more. Another thing to think about is how you organize those headers. So in this case, this person decided that they wanted to really focus on their skills. So they put those kind of at the top. They felt like that was the most important thing to highlight on their resume. That may not be the thing that you want to highlight on your resume as the first thing, but that is something that you could do. And the reason why this is important is employers spend a certain amount of time um, looking through a resume. So I would love to get your thoughts on what you think that time is. And we're going to do another little poll here. So if you take a moment and answer this question, we'll see what people think. Okay, so the 10 to 15 seconds has it. That is correct. That is how much time uh, the average recruiter will spend initially reading your resume. They might spend more time later, but to initially figure out kind of what's going to happen, that's the amount of time they're going to take. So that's why it's so important to think about how you organize your resume. You want you want somebody to see the most important things as early as possible because they might not have time to get to the rest of your resume. So don't put your most important thing at the bottom because they might not get there. So that's something for you to just think about as you're thinking about how you're going to update your information. And then there were a couple of people that talked in the chat about summary statements. So let's talk about those for a second. I think becoming more in vogue. They're certainly not required, but here are some ways that they might be helpful for you. I tend to see them as more helpful if you're looking to do something that almost doesn't relate to anything that's on your resume. They might be helpful that way. But they also would be helpful if you've got a lot of experience doing something that you really want to do, so that you can kind of highlight that information right up front, and it sort of addresses that question of, well, what are people going to read in the first 10 to 15 seconds? That kind of gets their attention, and maybe they'll say, okay, for this one, I'm going to read, for 20 seconds or maybe more. But it's really an overview of your experience, and it's a summary of kind of what you have to offer in the relation to the job. So your summary statement should ideally change at least a little bit from job to job. So some of you may be looking for jobs in a couple of different areas because you have that ability to do that based on your major and your experience. And so maybe your summary statement is the thing that you adjust the most on your resume as you tweak it to make it more personal for each experience, which you definitely want to do. And then we just talk a little bit about more how they are most effective. So you'll highlight important experience at the top of your resume, and that kind of thing. And then they may be called something else. So they may be called professional summary, professional qualifications, career profile. I've seen headline. I've seen people just put a statement at the top and not label it as anything, which can also be effective. So those are just some things for you to think about as you think about whether a summary is the right thing for you to do. And here are just a couple of examples that I've included to just kind of help you get a sense of some good summary statements. They're short, 3 to 5 sentences, um, like that. Some people put them in a bullet point format. Um, I think the more seasoned you get as a professional, the more important it is to have a summary statement because now you've had a lot of different experience. And you might even have, a 2-page resume when you get older. I don't know if I said this or not, but you really should just have a 1-page resume if you're an undergrad student. That's really the amount you should have. As you get older and have more experience and have more degrees, you can certainly expand on that. Um, so keep that in mind as well. Sometimes a powerful summary statement can kind of substitute for a cover letter. That's another thing. Sometimes people, cover letters, people have different viewpoints about them. We're not going to spend a lot of time on those, but if they ask for a cover letter, you definitely want to include one. And if they don't ask for one and say it's optional, you probably want to include one. And if they don't say anything about them, maybe you don't need one, but a summary statement can kind of help sort of bridge that gap between what's on your resume and what you want to do and make your cover letter or your application more powerful. So those are some other things to think about too. So now we're on to who are you sending your resume to? So we've covered, things to consider when you're updating your resume, how to go about updating your resume, and now we're going to talk about who you're going to send your resume to. So these are some things you want to keep in mind. Who is your audience? What are they looking for? And then how do your skills and experience align with what they're looking for? So you want to make sure that you do that. Curious in the chat if you can put down some ways that you might find out the answers to these things as you're putting your information together. What could you be doing that would help you find out who is your audience, what are their hiring needs, and how your skills and experience align with their needs? Danny, do we have any good things in the chat yet?
Not yet. Encourage you all to share some thoughts.
Yeah, you'll help everybody else too.
Yeah, you're likely not the only one with the same question or comment. Research the company beforehand. The main goal of the company? Question mark. Job description. Your thoughts. Certifications aligned with the position. Figuring out your skills, strengths, and weaknesses and what you need to improve on and which companies suit your career and personal needs. Look at the job posting and the description. It's a lot of JDs here.
Okay, that's definitely one of them for sure. And then research the company is an overarching. There are lots of different ways to do that. I've not heard anybody say anything about LinkedIn. So you can also go out to LinkedIn and kind of poke around and see, what's going on. What does their company page look like? What do they post as a company? If you know some people in the company, what do their profiles look like? So that's always good. And of course, if you get further along in the process and you get an interview, you definitely want to be looking at their LinkedIn profiles to see, a little bit about the people that you might interview with too. Did you see anybody else see any other thing in there?
Yeah, actually, as you were saying, Peter over here said sometimes I'll look at people in the role on LinkedIn and see what skills they have listed. So a
Yeah.
little bit of LinkedIn research.
Yep. Good. Perfect. So those are some ways that you can kind of look at that information. And this is important for a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons why is because you want to be thinking about kind of how you're going to get past some of the applicant tracking system sides of the recruiting process. So, applicant tracking system or ATS, it's a software application that's used by employers, and it basically helps them manage their hiring process. And there are several applicant tracking systems that companies use. Um, and basically, what'll happen is a recruiter will say, I want to, I've got an open rec. Here are the keywords that I want to search for. And they base that search on the job description and also probably in meetings that they're having with hiring managers and what's important to the hiring manager. And so a lot of companies use it because they get so many applications that they can't literally go through and hand read and look at every single one. Not every company uses an ATS system, but most companies do. And so you want to make sure that you're tailoring your resume to what's important so that your resume is one of the ones that gets picked up by the applicant tracking system. Once that happens, if you are accepted, then a human will usually read your resume after that. So it's still important that your resume not just look like you used ATS and you didn't do anything else. It needs to tell the story about you. Okay. But it definitely speeds up the process for a recruiter. So that's why the job descriptions are important. And you'll want to pay attention as you read about them, the keywords, the phrases, and kind of include those in your resume wherever you can, because that will make you stand out more in the process for sure. So those are kind of the what you need to look for to put your information together and kind of who think about your audience. And now I want to talk about some pitfalls to avoid. So maybe we could put a couple of those in the chat too. What are some things you know you shouldn't do on your resume?
Have typos.
Yeah, that's
Anything that's incriminating.
good.
Putting things that you can't back up in an interview. Absolutely.
Yeah, anything that you have on your resume is fair game for them to ask about in the interview. So definitely want to be careful there.
Lies. Vague description.
hmm That's where those
Sharing.
accomplishment statements come in.
hmm Sharing your own demographics. hmm Wrong contact information. Something outdated.
Yeah, be good to spell your name right.
Over exaggerating. Prioritizing experiences that have no relevance to the role. Old experience, like in middle school.
Yeah.
We got a kind of related question, Noel. Do companies verify your resume responsibilities during background checks?
Depends on the company's background check procedure. So, most likely, if they have a background check procedure that they follow, they're going to look at your education and verify that you completed something. They will also, depending on the role, they might check your financial background. Like if you're going into a finance role or something where you're going to be dealing with money. If they don't have a background check process, they may do an employment verification check where they'll call the company and they'll speak with somebody who's able to give that information and what they can verify as titles and dates of employment. So they do usually do at least that much. And then some companies, our school has this. We'll go through and we'll do a reference check, which is a little bit different, where we actually talk to somebody that our applicant has given us as somebody that we could talk to and ask a few questions. Um, so that's kind of the ways that companies do. But background checks themselves are dependent on the company. Some companies have drug testing that they make you go through too. But most of them do at least an employment verification where they'll get titles and dates of employment. Okay. So we listed a lot of the strategies or pitfalls to avoid. So a couple that we didn't talk about, dense resumes where you've just got a lot of stuff and it's hard to get through. I know that when you're writing a resume when you're in high school, sometimes your resume can be a lot longer because it's, for a different purpose. So it might be 3 pages because I've seen some of that with first years that come in and talk with us. So definitely you want to think about not having that there, and you can get some help from us. More than 1 page, if you're an undergraduate student, that can be a red flag. Um, it really depends on case by case basis, though. So if you're having a hard time figuring out what to let go of, that's when you want to come see us to get some help. We talked about typos. Inconsistent formatting. So if you think about it, like somebody's going to spend, if they get to actually reading your resume, they're going to spend 10 to 15 seconds. If your formatting is weird, like you've bolded one title on one job and you've underlined it on another and you've italicized it on another, that makes it really hard to get through something in 15 seconds because you can't really figure it out. Like you can't figure out what's going on. So definitely don't do that. Providing the incorrect name for your degree. So this is something that I want to say for those of you who are undergraduate business students on this call. Your degree, and maybe you can put this in the chat, Vanya, is a Bachelor of Science in Commerce. That's the name of your degree. Every single undergraduate business student at Santa Clara University, that is your degree, and that should be on your resume. And then your major is finance, accounting, business undeclared, whatever your situation is. Okay. So make sure you have the right name for your degree. Try not to get too fancy with the fonts. Uh, that it makes it hard to read if when it gets to that piece. Too wordy. Again, goes to that quick view that somebody's going to have. Get to the point. We're not writing a paper here. We're not writing anything like that. We're writing a resume. And I apologize because you learn how to write a resume after you've learned how to write these really great essays and all of these things, and we tell you to be grammatically correct, and resumes are a little bit different than that. So you're not using personal pronouns and things like that. The whole page is about you. Your name is at the top. And then one common thing that I see is folks using templates that aren't easily readable by an ATS system. So I don't recommend Canva. That's usually not the best way to go. Word and Google are your best docs for creating a resume. And then I recommend that you always send your resume in a PDF format so that it keeps its format. Okay. Are there any other questions that are in the chat, Vania? I haven't asked that of you.
So far, no.
Okay, we're good so far. Okay. All right, let me talk about some Career Center resources. So we are going to first focus on just our website. A lot of you who just need to update a few things are probably familiar with our job prep toolkit. Um, and it's located under Craft Your Personal Brand. And there's a whole bunch of information in there. So there's a resume, templates, and cover letter guide. Um, and I don't know, Vanya, maybe you want to put some of these in the chat now while we're chatting. Um, you can also schedule an appointment with us. So those of you who are in the master's program in the business school, you have actually a different career center. And so there is a different place that you would schedule a resume review or get coaching. And Van, you can put that in the chat so you know how to do that. And I'll review it again at the end. Um, so anyway, that's kind of some places to go. The resume template and cover letter guide gives you some information about writing accomplishment statements. There's some really great templates in there. So it's a good place to kind of get yourself started. And you can do this anytime. You don't need to see us to go through the job prep toolkit. So that makes it something you can do early in the morning or late at night when we're sleeping, and you're wanting to work on your resume. The next thing I want to chat about is JobScan, which all of you have access to, and it helps analyze your resume against job descriptions. I'm going to show you an example of that in a second. And it allows you to like optimize keywords. And this is a tool to kind of help you get through the applicant tracking system process. So you have the unlimited version as a Santa Clara student. You can get access JobScan through your My SCU portal or through our job prep toolkit. And then if you're an alumni and you're having trouble getting access, just send an email to the Career Center at scu.edu, and then we will get you that access. So let me pop out here and move our pictures around. So when you go into JobScan, when you're using it, I'm just going to show you a quick demo. You'll have you can do one of two things. You can either have a resume that you kind of store in here and multiple resumes that you store in here. You can also take a resume that you have and cut and paste it into this side of the scanner. And then you're also going to paste a job description inside on this side, and then you're going to push scan. And it's going to look at some things for you. You can also push optimize. I see it does some funny things though on the optimize side with some formatting I've realized. So optimize will give you some opportunities to kind of like put some words in there and things like that. I'm more comfortable with the scanning side so that I have a choice about what I put in. Um, so this is kind of the first scan. So I've got a 36%. That's pretty low. So if I were going to make this better, I would want to probably get to at least 50%, and even 70 would be better. And there are some things that it tells you. So it goes through and it gives you like searchability. So it tells me they can find my contact information. They can, some of my section headings are a little weird for them. Like I have different names than maybe I should. And so they find it hard to navigate. JobScan recommends that you put a job title on your resume. I don't have that on this resume. And I think that is something you can do, don't have to do. The dates that I've formatted maybe don't really match what they would suggest. So I might go back through and format my dates differently. My education does meet. And this is where I really think you get kind of to the nuts and bolts. So it goes through the job description and it pulls out a lot of the keywords, and it tells you how many times the keywords are in the job description against how many times they're in your resume. So as you can see, I'm missing a lot of keywords here. So if I was going to go back and make my resume better, I would go back and probably change a few bullets to make sure that I, updated this better. Now, can I put all of these in here? Well, yes, if I have done them, but if I have not, participated or don't have any regulatory, things that I can put on my resume, I'm certainly not going to put that on my resume just because it's not there now. It shouldn't be there because I don't have that. But, required, like HR is required. I've got that 5 times, so I'm covered. Administrative support would probably be a good idea because it's mentioned twice and I've not mentioned it at all. I could mention Microsoft Office Suite for sure. I don't say it in that way at least. So that kind of gives you some ideas of some ways you can go back out to your resume and make some tweaks. I personally like to make the tweaks in my resume outside of the job scan system. You can do it that way, but I think it's better if you do it on your own and then re-upload your resume and scan it again to see how you're doing. Um, Soft skills, same thing. Gives you an idea of all the soft skills they're looking for and then how many times they're mentioned on the resume or on the job description and how many times they're mentioned on your resume. So confidentiality mentioned 4 times, I don't have it. Well, I do have an HR background, so it'd be a good idea to put that word in there somehow. And so I could tweak a bullet point, and that would help. It also talks about kind of what recruiters are looking for. Now, I picked a job to compare my resume against that was in Handshake, that's an internship. Of course, it's not the right job level match, but just to give you an idea of kind of how it scores, I wanted you to see something. So there, I would need to maybe do some things here to change that. And then formatting, it likes my formatting. So it likes how I've done things that way. So this just gives you kind of an idea of what to do with JobScan to help you make your resume more ATS friendly as you're going through the process. And I don't know if any questions surfaced as we were going through that, Vanya. Okay.
Mm. Oh, we just got one.
Okay.
When applying for software engineering jobs, do we need to quantify our responsibilities and accomplishments on our resume since numbers are not always accurate or justifiable?
Well, the answer to that would be as much as you can. As much as you can, I would. Think of there might be other ways that you can display your level of responsibility or achievement other than numbers. So if there's another way you can write a statement that, is accomplishment oriented that doesn't have a number, that's going to be okay. I know it's sometimes harder in more scientific, um, pursuits. As a business major, you better have some numbers. That's going to be pretty critical. So I don't know if you want to add anything, Vanya, since that's your world.
Yeah, I'll add, you can think about sort of outcomes and impact by milestones or timelines and resource management too. Um, and then sometimes efficiencies or time saved, money saved, right? That can contribute to some level of impact or outcome that you're quantifying. And if you can't, then it's like, hey, we're keeping on track with our timeline goals. Like that is still an outcome of the work that you're doing, right? So those are other ways to talk about the impact of your work there.
Yeah, and if you meet a deadline early, that's always great too. Yeah. Okay, that was great. Thank you, Vanya. All right. So, some other resources that you want to think about. We've been talking about AI. Certainly, you want to use it. Um, just you want to make sure that you're not copying word for word. So, you know, definitely put a bullet point in there to make it sound a little bit better. I would not have AI write your resume for you. I would write your resume and stick a bullet point into AI and then see what it spits back out. And certainly don't say things that are not true about yourself, but don't have AI write your resume. I wouldn't start there. I think that gets really dicey because then you're kind of going through and trying to figure out what you should get rid of and what not. And it's better to start with something on your own first and tell your own story. AI is never going to be able to tell your whole story. You're the one that's going to tell your story. So definitely use it. Only include what's truthful, but it definitely can be a help in terms of clarifying some things, maybe shortening a bullet. If you tend to be on the wordy side of life, that might be helpful. Um, so you kind of know who you are in that realm. Might suggest a better action verb for you to use. So those kinds of things, definitely something. And then the muse, I think this is going to eventually go away because AI is going to take over, but this is still a fairly good resource for getting some information about different types of things related to your resume. So I highly recommend checking out that resource as well. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about timelines. recruiting timelines. So here's a general timeline. Um, so as you can see, if you're kind of on if you're more on the tech side of life, if you want to go into consulting, if you're thinking about investment banking or finance or anything like that, and also some of the engineering types of roles, those tend to have an earlier recruiting timeline than other majors. So you certainly don't want to be waiting if you're a business student until March to start looking for um, a job, unless potentially you're a marketing student, because marketing jobs get posted a lot later than finance jobs do. So you want to be thinking in advance. And I don't think accounting is on this, but accounting also has a really early schedule, although that's starting to change a little bit. But a lot of accounting companies will hire interns to work for them in their sophomore year to work for their junior summer. So that's very, very common. So you want to understand those sorts of timelines. And the, the consulting timelines are pretty much for the bigger consulting firms. Those jobs have been posted or posted right now. So if you're thinking consulting is a career option for you, definitely you want to get in there right away because you're getting towards the end of that. Um, but some more arts, culture, media, government, those have like a longer timeline and a later timeline than others. Bigger companies tend to recruit earlier than smaller companies because they hire a lot of people, usually in a similar role. And so they want to get the cream of the crop early and beat out everybody else. So that's one of the reasons why they do that. I do have one that's a little bit more business focused that goes into some of the nitty-gritty with accounting, consulting, and these are, a lot more on the internship side of things. So for those of you who are underclassmen and you're looking at internships in the future, here are some things to be thinking about as well. Um, and you know, if you need some help with figuring that out and want to get through and get some support from us, that is definitely something that we can help you with in figuring out timelines. So with that, I want to mention a few fall programming opportunities. So we have a resume workshop that we're going to be offering on Thursday, September 24th. I believe it's posted in Handshake right now, but the time may change. For those of you who are not aware or you're new to the university, the Career Center is moved. If you've been here for a while, we are no longer in the Benson Center. We are located in Locatelli now, and we're on the second floor. We just moved into our new space a week ago. And so we're looking forward to hosting you and having you visit us. And for those of you who are new, you don't know anything about being in Benson, so we are in Locatelli, and please come see us in Locatelli. So that's one opportunity. Another is we will have some drop-in resume refresh opportunities. So those will get posted in Handshake too. They're not in there right now because we're still figuring out exact times of the week and day that we're going to do those, but we'll usually have 2 a week in the fall. And then we will also have a webinar. JobScan is going to be leading a webinar. And so they're going to talk a lot about their program and their tool and, applicant tracking system needs and AI in general in the job search. So that will be a really good opportunity for you to hear from JobScan specifically. And that will happen virtually on Wednesday, October 7th from 5:30 to 6:30. So those are some opportunities that will also be in Handshake. We're still finalizing a few details on that, but that should get posted in Handshake by the end of this week. And just as we're starting to finish up here, and then we'll take any questions, some next steps. Um, Obviously, you want to make any changes. So hopefully there are some things we talked about today that help you to make some changes to your resume. And then you're going to want to review some of our resume resources on our Career Center website. So you can actually take a picture of this slide and you'll have all the addresses. Or you can look at the recorded version of this on YouTube by the end of this week. And then if you're going to be scheduling an appointment to have your resume reviewed and you're an undergraduate student or you're a master's student in engineering, counseling and psychology, theology, any of those, you can schedule a resume review with the Career Center. And then if you're a master's student in the Levy School of Business, you're going to connect with the graduate business career services office. And then they have a coaches section on at this link, so you can go down and make an appointment with a coach. And then you're going to use, we suggest you use JobScan. It's free to you to analyze your resume against job descriptions. So those are kind of the next steps that we've got for you. And I think that takes me to the end. So, what questions does anybody have before we wrap it up? We've got a little bit of time left.
Noel, I've been answering a couple of questions in the chat, but maybe I can bring a few of those up for the benefit of the crowd
Yeah.
in case they're not following the chat. Um, One of them was about noticing that internships often require bachelor's, and so which types of internships are then suitable for sophomores, juniors, and seniors if they haven't officially received their bachelor's degree yet?
So I'm not sure what you said to the person that you answered that with, but usually an internship is looking for somebody who's working toward a bachelor's degree, not that they have a bachelor's degree. So read the job description to make sure that that's the case. There are a few organizations that will do internships for people that have graduated, but that's not the most common way. So you might find that you might see that occasionally, but most of the time, a company is looking for somebody who's at least pursuing a bachelor's degree. So you don't have to have one yet. Um, so anyway, is that what you
That's
said?
also, yeah, that's exactly what I said, Noelle. We're on the
Yeah.
same page.
Okay, good.
We got a question just on clarifying what might be the difference between the resume workshop on September 24th versus what they learned in this one.
I think that one is going to be much more hands-on. So if you bring your resume with you, somebody will sit down and kind of go through things so you can look at your resume at the same time and make changes, and then there'll be help available. So it'll be a little bit different than this because there are, 56 of you on a call right now. I am not able to go through and look at everybody's resume and give you individualized attention. So it'll be a little bit different in that regard. And it's in person, so you can ask people questions too.
Awesome. And then we got one about JobScan. Should
Mhm.
we use JobScan's resume builder to help optimize our resume? As I've noticed, it's messed with the format of how it looked and exceeded a page. Think that alludes to something you shared earlier, and I think we're all on the same page here too, that it's probably best used to just get the information on how you might tailor your resume. So how do I tweak the keywords that I'm missing, things like that, as opposed to utilizing it to build a resume or to reformat, because it will reformat it probably to your disliking.
Yeah. And did you put the resume and cover letter guide in the chat? So
Yes.
there are some really great templates there, really great information about creating a resume. That's where I would start if you were, if you're updating or if you're creating something from scratch, I would start there.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight earlier we had a question from a incoming first year on sort of, prioritizing what to keep and how to optimize as a first year. I did say that there's a first year Bronco resume sample that lives in our resume and cover letter guide. So for those of you who are intending to convert your high school resume into a college one, and you want to use it to apply to on-campus jobs, for example, that would be a really helpful one. But I will note that there are a lot of different headers in the first year resume sample. It doesn't mean you need to have the header for all of those categories. They're just examples of the types of headers you can include. So choose which ones make most sense for you and really think through the lens of transferable skills, right? Not that you know how to operate a machine that makes bread, but maybe that you learned how to use this new machine or tool very quickly, which makes sense for someone else looking at your resume if they're not a bread making shop.
Good example.
We have another question, Noelle, if we have a minute for that.
Yeah.
I think this is a little bit more about sort of managing time and prioritization. So this student said that they're noticing that there are tons of recruiting meetings and opportunities for like academic, clubs, sports, etc. Obviously, everyone only has so much time in a day. How do I and others figure out which resume and recruiting workshops and fairs are the most high ROI and effective to help us with career and personal development? Because realistically, we cannot attend them all.
What year is this person? Do they
Um, Muncie, if you don't mind sharing, incoming first year.
first year? Okay, so first year, it's a really great question. It's kind of overwhelming, and you're going to get invited to a lot of stuff, and you're going to get a lot of emails from us through Handshake, more than you'll ever want, probably. I think the first year is just about thinking about a few things that you might be interested in and exploring those to see if they're a fit for you. Like maybe you go to one of the career fairs because, you're a business major, so you go to the Bash Career Fair just to walk around, just to see what it's like. Um, Most of the time, an employer is not going to hire a freshman because you don't have enough experience yet to get hired for an internship. But it gives you a sense of kind of what it's like to be a part of a career fair. And so then it's not so scary when you do it 2 years later or a year later when you now have more skin in the game and more experience and more likelihood of getting hired. So, you don't need to go to all of them. Go to one. If you're in the science field, go to the STEM career fair instead. And in terms of clubs, you gotta look at the descriptions of the clubs and figure out which seems like it might be the right fit for you. Try it out. If you don't like it, don't stick with it. So part of being a college student is sort of figuring out kind of who's your tribe. Who do you want to hang out with? Who has similar likes and dislikes to you, all those kinds of things. And I say that, you know, in addition to career searching, because I feel like a lot of the things that you will do in college, that are not necessarily directly applicable to finding a job, they definitely have an impact. What clubs and organizations you apply to definitely have or participate in definitely can have an impact on your college career and potentially an impact on your ability to get certain opportunities. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's kind of how I look at it. You just have to pick and choose. And some things will fall off and some things you'll stick with because you really find that they help you. But you don't have to do everything, and it's okay. Your first quarter, especially, it's just trying to get a lay of the land. Um, we're just exposing you to things so that you know that stuff is out there more than anything. Have fun too. We want you to have fun. It goes very fast. So 4 years is gonna fly by. With that, we should stop. It is 101. Thank you all so much for being a part of the conversation today, for your great questions and information that you put in the chat. I look forward to seeing you on campus, and I hope you have a good start to the school year and a good year. Thanks a lot.